Hello and welcome to the second episode of Exclusively PS. We've got an awesome show for you today. In the news this week, I'll be talking about PS4's Firmware 4.50 update. We'll be talking about Hideo Kojima's talk at RTX this past week. We'll also be talking about Overwatch's game director's plea to Sony and much more. Later on in the show, we'll be looking at a great little indie title that's on the horizon, and we'll also be talking about the myths behind video game prices in Australia. So let's talk PlayStation. This week, Sony rolled out the beta for PS4's Firmware 4.50 update, and they gave us a look at some of the features we can expect with that update. Leading the list is external hard drive support. It's going to support USB 3.0 drives, and as long as they're under 8 terabytes. It will allow you to download your applications directly to the drive, and you'll manage the content through the system settings. Your content will appear normally on the content launcher on the home screen when the drive is plugged in. One important thing to note about this feature is that your user save files are still going to be stored locally on the PS4. It's only the applications themselves that are going to be on the external hard drive. Secondly, with this update, users are now going to be able to create their own custom wallpapers using in-game screenshots. The new feature will also add drop shadows to text, and it'll allow you to dim the function area so that you can still see all your icons and all the text when you have your own custom wallpaper. Also, you can edit the screenshots in photo mode using Share Factory to make your wallpapers even more customized. Thirdly, the quick menu has been revamped to make it smaller in size, and then now you can also access party features from the quick menu itself instead of having to launch the party application. Features like joining parties, inviting friends, and creating parties can now all be done from the quick menu itself. Fourthly, players will now be able to post directly to their activity feed. You will now be able to post text, screenshots, and GIFs directly into the activity feed, and you'll also be able to tag games and people in those posts. I'm actually not too sure how I feel about this new feature. I'm a little worried that my activity feed is not going to be game related anymore and going to slowly turn into the mess that is my activity feed on Facebook. The last thing I want to do is log into my PS4 and see a bunch of posts about political issues and stuff that's not game related. Let's just hope that they give us the feature to be able to filter this list as well and get all that stuff out of there. And related to this feature, screenshots you now upload to the PSN as public activity are going to appear in PlayStation Live for the world to see. Fifthly, the notification list has been revamped with this update. All the left-hand side tabs like game alerts, downloads, and uploads have now all been consolidated into one master list. You will also be given the ability to control which notifications pop up while you're playing games. This is definitely a welcome feature for me. In the last several months, I've been getting tons of spam messages that pop up when I'm playing games and when I'm trying to record content for this show, so I'm really glad to see this feature added. Boost mode has also been added with this update, and what this is going to do is for games that haven't been patched for the PS4 Pro, it's going to allow them to take advantage of the greater CPU and GPU that are in the PS4 Pro. So any games that are currently running at a variable frame rate may experience an increased frame rate, and it also might shorten your load times. And lastly, this update will allow you to play 3D Blu-rays in full stereoscopic 3D on the PSVR headset. So this will be a very welcome feature for 3D movie lovers that have a PSVR. And if you didn't already know, the PS4 is selling like crazy. It just had its best quarter ever, selling 9.7 million units as compared to 8.4 million units at the same time last year. As of January 1st, the PS4's user base has increased to 53.4 million units. Which means it has now sold more units than the Super Nintendo, which sold 49.1 million units in its lifetime. Death Stranding is in the news as Hideo Kojima gave a talk this week at RTX in Sydney. When asked in a question if Death Stranding would be a PS5 game, he said that wouldn't be the case, that it would be a PS4 game. He also stated that at this time, Death Stranding is not a PSVR game. Kojima said his team is currently working on game logic and working on building out the game world and building on their foundation in 2017. This tells me that the game is still quite far out, and I'm not even sure I'd expect it in 2018. Overwatch game director and Blizzard vice president Jeff Kaplan posted on the game's official forums this week saying that the Overwatch team does not condone the use of mice and keyboards on consoles. He also stated that they have contacted both Sony and Microsoft to lobby against the use of mice and keyboard on the consoles, and he's asking them to either disallow mice and keyboards completely or make it openly accessible for all users. He also encouraged players to reach out to hardware manufacturers and express their concerns. So this comes at a great relief for me. Up until this point, I thought I just sucked at Overwatch, but now I have something to blame. I can blame those mice and keyboards, and this needs to stop immediately. January's PlayStation 4 numbers have been announced, and Ark Survival Evolved has topped the charts for 2 consecutive months in a row. I haven't tried Ark myself, but I have watched some Let's Plays on YouTube, and this game looks really cool. I haven't played too many survival games before, so I'm not really quite sure if it's my thing. I really wish they'd release a demo or something so I could try it out, but now after seeing these numbers, maybe I'm just going to have to take the plunge. And as I close out this segment of the show, I just wanted to remind you guys that the For Honor beta is currently taking place right now, so if you haven't had a chance yet to try out that game, you have until February 12th, as it's an open beta, so get out there and give it a try. The big new release this week has been Neo, the PlayStation exclusive that came out on February 7th. The game was developed by Team Ninja and is the spiritual successor to the Ninja Gaiden series. The game takes place in feudal Japan, and you control the samurai William, who is set out to get rid of the demonic forces that are taking over the land. As a samurai, you have a full arsenal of weapons such as swords and polearms and axes and katanas, all that kind of stuff. The gameplay is very similar to Bloodborne and is very challenging. I recently played the open beta and I just loved the game, but it was very challenging and I kept getting my butt handed to me. But the game seemed very fair and not cheap. When I died, it was because of mistakes that I made. It wasn't because of poor design or the game's fault. To get by each new type of enemies, it required me to perfect my movements and to understand the enemy's battle tactics. And then once I learned the enemy's battle tactics, places that I used to find very difficult became much easier. The monsters are very well done. For example, there's this one ogress boss who cries these blood tears, and everywhere her tears land, these red flowers grow. So as you're going through the zone and you get closer to the boss, there's all these red flowers everywhere. It's really cool. It has these shrines that act as checkpoints, the same idea as the lanterns in Bloodborne or the bonfires in Dark Souls. I can't stress enough how pretty this game is. The world design is absolutely fantastic, and it's definitely on par with Bloodborne. It had me always pushing to explore the area and see what awesome thing lurked around the corner. If you enjoyed Bloodborne, you definitely want to check this game out. So this week I was pumped to play Double Dragon 4. On Sunday I got all comfortable on the couch, put my feet up, logged in, went over to the PSN, and it's not there. So I pull up my laptop, log into the PlayStation Store on there, search for Double Dragon 4, and it's still not there. So I am Canadian, but I'm currently living in Australia, so I go and I log into the PlayStation Europe blog, where I'm sure I read that Double Dragon 4 is coming out this week, and sure enough, it does say it's coming out. So I scroll down to the comments, and I see, sure enough, lots of people posting that it's not available in Austria, it's not available in the Dutch store, it's not available in Australia, and so on and so forth. So it looks like I'm not alone. I don't know what happened, but someone definitely dropped the ball. So I finally came to the realization that there was no Double Dragon 4 in my future, so I ended up loading up Yakuza 0, and man, that game did not disappoint again. Man, this game is really messed up and really great at the same time. So I'm going to tell a little story about a side quest, so there's going to be minor spoilers, so if you don't want to hear something about just a minor side quest, just skip ahead a little bit. So I'm walking down the street, and there's this guy that comes up to me. He's wearing like a leather jacket, and he has his hair kind of like all puffed up, almost like in an Elvis do. And he starts talking to me, and he's like being really nice to me, but really rude to me at the same time, which I thought was very strange. And then he just goes away. And so I'm walking down the street, and I see a big group of people all gathered there, and they're waiting for a band to play. And they tell me that there's going to be a question and answer period after the band plays. So I look over and I see that same weird guy all cowering over in the distance, trying not to be seen. So I walk up to him and I say like, "Hey man." And he goes on to explain to me that he's sorry for being so rude, and he's kind of shocked that I don't know who he is. And he said he's one of the band members, and he says he's really nervous and anxious because there's going to be a Q&A period afterwards. And I guess what happened is him and his band wore these leather jackets on stage once, and now all their fans think they're really hardcore, but they're not actually hardcore guys. They're really nice and friendly guys, and they don't know how to deal with a question and answer period because they don't want people to find them out that they're actually not hardcore. So he asked me to help him because I look all hardcore. So I'm like, okay, I'll help you. And he calls over his bandmates, and they tell me that they've been given their questions already, and if I could help them answer these questions in a hardcore fashion, they'd really appreciate it. So like, for example, one of the guy's questions is, so what do you do all day? And he says he's really nervous about it because he just does something like sit at home and play with his cat or something like that. And so I give him these 3 options as to what to tell him, and one of the options is to say that, just tell the crowd that you go out and you fight all day. And the rest of the questions are very similar to that. So anyways, the band goes and they play, and then they do their question and answer period, and then the fans ask them those questions, and they tell the fans about how they just fight all the time, and they spend their days fighting. And the fans get all happy, and they're clapping, and they're like, yay, you're so hardcore. It's just the strangest quest ever. So no Double Dragon for me this week, but I did help a band save their hardcore image, so all is well. Indies is the segment of the show where I highlight the latest developments in the indie world and hopefully bring your attention to some indie games that may not yet be on your radar. In this week's segment, I'd like to draw your attention to a game that's being developed called Vikings, Wolves of Midgard. The game is being developed by Games Farm, and it's listed as having an early 2017 release, but it also says on Amazon that it's coming out March 28th, but I don't think that's officially confirmed yet. The game is an action RPG hack and slash, very similar to Diablo style. The game puts you in control of either a male warrior or a female shield maiden who has returned to their village only to find the whole thing destroyed by giants. And there's some sort of ice demon named Jakul that is turning Midgard into just one big snow level. As I mentioned on last week's show, I have a big soft spot for snow levels. Some of my best gaming memories are journeying through the icy mountains of Skyrim, or journeying through like the snowy lands in Ironforge while it's snowing outside in Canada. So anytime a game has good snow levels, I have to give it a try. Games Farm have taken things a step further in this game. Your characters are actually affected by the cold. What this means is your characters are actually slowed down and could actually die if they don't stop and take time to warm up by a bonfire. This puts a new spin on combat because not only do you have to watch your health bar, but you're also watching to ensure that your character is not freezing. So you gotta be really fast with the battles and then go warm up. Anytime environmental effects have an impact on your character, I'm all for it. The game lets you yield all types of weapons like magical staffs, bows, blades, two-handed swords, and it also has a rune system that lets you customize your equipment. The game has a skill upgrade system where you're given these gift points that you can allocate towards a god, and then that god will give you new abilities. You can also level up stats like maximum health, your damage, elemental resistance, that sort of thing. The game also has big tactical boss fights that look quite good. From what I've seen, the game looks quite good, and we'll just have to wait a little while longer to see if it'll scratch that Diablo itch, but from what I've seen, it definitely has me intrigued. Watch for this one coming out on PS4 in early 2017. Almost 2 years ago, I moved from Canada to Australia, and I heard nothing but horror stories about how much video games cost in Australia. Earlier this week, Greg Miller of Kinda Funny fame was at RTX in Sydney, Australia, and tweeted out a picture of video game prices that stated, "Newfound respect for Australian gamers. Sorry this hobby costs so much down there." In the picture, it showed Gravity Rush 2 for the PS4 for $99.95. It showed Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the PS4 for $69.95. It also showed the PSVR headset for $549.99. and Resident Evil 7 for $89.95. So first of all, I noticed that some of the games in the picture had EB Games price tags on them, and if you live in Australia, you know that new release video games at EB Games and on the PlayStation Store are ridiculously expensive, and you know to stay away from those stores. Secondly, there's no denying that older games are grossly overpriced in Australia. However, new release video games and hardware are actually cheaper in Australia than they are in the US, and here's why. In San Francisco, if I was to order a new release video game for the PS4 like Gravity Rush 2 from either Amazon or BestBuy.com, it would cost me $59.99 USD. And if I lived in San Francisco, I'd be charged a sales tax of 8.5%, making the total price $65.09 USD. This same price applies to most new release titles on the PS4. When you convert this to Australian dollars at today's currency rate, it's a total of 85.20 Australian. The standard price of a new release video game in Australia is $79, and this price can be found at Big W, which is the Australian equivalent of Walmart. It can be found at Target, and it can be found at JB Hi-Fi, which is kind of like the Australian equivalent of Best Buy. And in Australia, the price includes sales tax, so all you pay is $79. This means the standard retail price of PS4 video games in Australia are actually $5.20 Australian, or $3.97 USD cheaper to buy in Australia. And the same holds true for hardware. PlayStation VR sells for $399.99 USD in the US, and if you lived in San Francisco, that would make the total $433.99 after sales tax. If you convert this to Australian dollars at today's currency rate, that equals $568.35. PlayStation VR retails in Australia for $549, taxes included. This makes it $19.35 Australian or $14.78 USD cheaper to buy in Australia over the US. So as I mentioned before, if you avoid buying your video games at EB Games and the PlayStation Store, new release video games are actually cheaper to buy in Australia than they are in the US. And that's it for the show this week. I'll be back next Friday with a new episode. In the meantime, if you have a question you'd like answered on the show, you can go ahead and send those questions in to Derek at ExclusivelyPS.com. You can follow me on Twitter at followthefowl, and that's fowl as in bird. I'm also available on the PSN at PrairieMcChicken. If you happen to be listening to the audio version of this on iTunes, you can see the full video version at youtube.com/exclusivelyps. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm Derek Deschamps. I'll see you next week. Cheers. Indies is the segment of the show where I highlight the latest developments in the windy world. Oh, it's gonna be a long day.